In this week's Torah portion, Ekev, we have the continuation of Moshe Rabbeinu's final speech. And, the very start, we are told, Vaya Ekev tishmeun et hamishpatim ha'ele. Moses tells us, if you keep the commandments, then God will keep his part, the vow he made to the forefathers. And last week and the past couple of weeks we were talking about why God chose us, because we were the only ones that accepted the commandments. But in this week's Torah portion, right, this first verse that has this condition, right, if we keep the commandments, then God will keep his part. Something I can't help but find myself asking, why did God? I understand why God chose us, right? So we're the only ones who accepted this burden of the Commandments. But Moses then in this week's Torah portion, like last week, keeps on saying all the times we disappointed, Moses and God. And I can't help but we basically did everything that could be the worst possible scenario we did in the desert. And then one must ask themselves, why did God remain with us? Why not? Right? There was a time when God was absolutely furious. He said, I'm going to destroy this nation, and out of you, Moses, I'm going to create a new nation. Perhaps the Bible is teaching us that this model of one nation that's going to bring light to the world simply cannot work. It has failed. It is failing. Perhaps it would make more sense to have, Lamed Vav or Chasidei Umot Olam, right? Perhaps create a scenario where instead of having a nation, you have unique individuals spread around the world, that they're the ones who are going to, rekindle the fire, make this world a better place. Because clearly the biblical Israelites, what's happened throughout history, we're not really doing it. And so the question is, why does God remain with us? That is my question. And in the middle of this week's Torah portion, Moses says something which is I felt at least like a slap in the face. He reminds us, don't think for a second that God chose you for your righteousness. Right? That's not why God chose you, because you've been ratbags throughout the whole time. The only reason God chose you is because there were evil people in Canaan that had to be kicked out. But more importantly, because God made an oath to the forefathers that you were going to be, that their seed was going to be his people, and so on and so forth. And then this brings me back to the beginning, the first verse, this conditional verse. I don't really think there is a condition here. I don't really think this verse says, the first verse of Ekev, if we keep the commandments, then God will keep his part. Because the ending of this verse says, because God swore to the forefathers. The only sense I can make of why God has stuck along with us is because, perhaps it's not okay me saying this, because God has no choice. In Judaism, we believe that the world was created through words, right? God said, let there be light, and the world was created. Following that belief, I think what Moses might be saying here is that once the world was created, and once God made a promise, right, an oath, these are words, the most sacred words given by God to man, to the forefathers, once an oath was created, an unbreakable bond became, through Israel, through God and the future Israelite people, became a condition for this world to exist. And once that package is broken, there is no more world. This world is destroyed, and you have to start with a new model. I think that's what Moses is saying here. There's this philosophical question: can God create a rock that he can't pick up? I think maybe in Ekev Moses gives us the answer: yes. If God swears and it's a fundamental oath that is the basis of the reality of everything, then yes, that rock cannot be, or that bond between Israel and God cannot be broken. And therefore, I think what Moses is saying to us is, this bond is unbreakable. We're stuck for good, you and God. And therefore, it is up to you when redemption will happen, based on our merits, and when you start taking upon yourselves the role that was intended, going back to the way the forefathers behaved, or this relationship that the forefathers had with God. Anyway, thoughts on Ekev? Shabbat Shalom.